What's going on, guys? In today's video, we're gonna talk about what in the world is a seller's market. Here's the most simplistic version. A seller's market is when there are less homes than there are buyers. But it's a little more complicated than that. So I wanna walk you guys through a really great understanding so that you can be like the ultimate person at like a Christmas party or a family get together and you can drop some knowledge bombs on what a seller's market actually is. Now, I've also got this beautiful graph in front of us for you to be able to follow along and see some real, actual real estate stats to understand some of these key indicators on what makes something a seller's market. And we got a whole other video series on the difference between markets where you can look at what a buyer's market is, understand what a seller's market is, understand how they compare to one another. Click that, check it out. But in the meantime, let's dive right in. This right here, this big peak that we're seeing where sales prices were going crazy, we're looking at a graph over here of Southern Ontario in Canada. And what you'll notice is sale prices were going absolutely crazy. But just because sale prices are going crazy doesn't always mean it's a seller's market. What defines it more than anything being a seller's market is when there's very low inventory. Have you ever heard that before? There's low inventory. You hear it on the news, you hear it all these different places. What low inventory means is that there's very few homes for sale and there's a lot of people that actually want to buy those houses, and that creates bidding wars, which ultimately drives up the price, which is what you're seeing over here with this big peak of sales prices back in February of 2022. If I click over here to homes for sale, you can see in February 2022, we're at an all-time low of actual houses that are for sale on the market. And what this does is it creates a huge discrepancy where there's all these buyers and they're buying up the supply of houses, and there's very few sellers down here. And this creates a lot of competition where all those buyers are competing and they're pushing up the price, and it makes it really competitive. And I'll show you an example of that. If we click on percentage of original price, this graph showed us at the height of a seller's market, houses were selling almost 20% on average above the asking price. So everybody was listing their house here, houses were selling on average 20% higher. In a buyer's market, it's the exact opposite. You'll kind of be able to understand a buyer's market right away by taking everything we're talking about today and flipping it upside down. So a buyer's market is when there's tons of houses for sale and there's not enough people actually going out of their way to buy. The other thing that we'll notice is in a buyer's market, we talked about the fact there's very few homes for sale. There's also not gonna be enough new houses being listed. So not only are there not many houses on the market, but there's not a big increase of new houses being added to the market, okay? And then the other thing that happens in a seller's market is houses spend very few days on the market. Think about it logically for a second. We've got all the supply and we have buyers that way outmatch the supply. So we've got way more buyers, we've got this many houses, and what happens is those buyers are competing. So they're pushing up the price and they're also moving really, really quickly because they don't want to miss their opportunity to get their foot in the door to buy a house and get that transaction finished. The very last one would be the month's supply. That means how long do houses actually sit on the market before someone scoops it up? And you can see, again, at the height of the seller's market, there was only 0.6 months of supply. In other words, less than 1 full month's worth of houses. At the very peak, there was a third of a month's worth of houses available. So if there's, typically there's a whole pie, let's say, and everyone wants to try and eat some of the pie, there's only 1/3 of that pie for the month. So it's like crazy competition. Everybody's trying to get in really fast. Houses sell really quickly. They sell above asking. There's way more buyers than there are houses for sale. This is the breakdown of what's happening in a seller's market. But just more than talking about the stats that you need to know of what makes a seller's market, let's talk about what it feels like in a seller's market so that you can catch some of the more nuanced things of what's going on when you're in a seller's market. Here's something you'll notice when your community is in a seller's market. You'll drive around and you'll see very few for sale signs. It's like nothing's for sale anywhere. The other trends that happen in the economy is money's also really cheap to borrow. And this creates a buying frenzy because if you make interest rates really low, then borrowing that money doesn't really feel very painful. You can get that money for very cheap monthly payments. Here's the other thing you'll feel that's a big challenge. Everybody in a seller's market looks like a great listing agent. When you're in a buyer's market, it's really hard to sell houses, and that's when the strategy and the technique matters more than ever. So when you have that good technique, you'll be able to sell relative to the rest of the market for a higher amount and then negotiate like crazy on the buying side and actually create a larger spread that I would call your equity position in your home, where you sell for a good amount of money, but then you're able to buy for even less, or if you're upsizing, you're buying for more, you're able to pull down that price to make the difference closer together. That's the whole goal. This tangent is actually really important for you to understand some of these nuances in not just what a seller's market is, but what should you do in a seller's market? What should you be doing in different markets? What I want you to do is drop a comment below. Let me know your thoughts, your questions on the difference between a seller's market, a buyer's market. If you're in a seller's market, what do you do? What are your advantages, disadvantages? And I'd love to chime in or pick up the phone. Give me a call, 289-216-6852. Looking forward to helping you guys. If you're enjoying this, remember, we got more videos like this. Go check them out. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys over there. Cheers.